Thank you very much for being here, as this is the end of this very, very tiring week of Design Week. I'm very happy tonight to close up and to end this session of Metaphysical Club reading session. And I'm very happy to do that with very, very close friends. One is Patricia Orchiola, who has been working and collaborating together at Domus Academy for 2 years, and really she's one of the person who has given me the most during the last years from the cultural, intellectual, but also personal point of view. Another one is Emiliano Ponzi, a very famous illustrator working here in Italy, but really all over the world. I've recently got in touch with him. Emiliano is the author of this fantastic illustration for the Metaphysical Club. We have been also working together for an exhibition that is still ongoing at Casa Testori, talking about Milan. So different opportunities to share and to get in touch with him. And then I'm very pleased also to introduce 2 students from Domus. One is Ashley Davenport from the Master in Luxury Brand Management, and the other one is Flavia Marconi from the Master in Fashion Styling and Visual Merchandising. So, as you know, we've decided during the Design Week to introduce this particular format, so reading session. So we decided every night to gather here in this fantastic location of Milan and to share our thinking, our thoughts, just reading our favorite books and texts. As a starting point for discussion, for exchanging ideas, and for thinking about also our life and our path as designers. So I'm gonna ask Patricia to start with the reading.
Good evening. Ecco, is okay? Boh. Ecco, I'm suffering a little bit because the book I took is in Italiano. Okay, it's not gonna because it's gonna be a problem. Perhaps I try to translate. I read a smaller piece and I do little translation. I'm suffering for that.
Read in Italian, Patri, and then we're gonna translate.
Bueno, I am speaking, and the book I choose is, I think when you have to tell anything about a book that you like, must be always, it's not the book that you more important or the one that gave you the biggest imprinting, is the one that you ever said in that moment, is the one that you are reading. I think it's okay, it doesn't work very well. Then, what I think is, in this period, the last 40 days, we were doing a work for Salone del Mobile, and we were doing a work that was related with Expo, and was inside an exhibition that the idea was about fasting. Then I was reading Kafka, Philip Roth, things that were related with this, and I was lost. I was so happy, lost in that argument. Then I'm gonna read you a piece of this book of Philip Roth, which is Ho sempre voluto che ammiraste il mio digiuno, ovvero guardando Kafka, that in English, and this is what I'm trying to translate now to you. The real name is I always wanted you to admire my fasting, or looking at Kafka. It's a book from the 1973, and is related to one of the last book, the last book done by Kafka, which is it's been done in the year before he died. The page I'm reading, then I will try to translate, because I think if not we have a problem. Is the beginning of the book that I love it, and it's a piece of Kafka. Then I like, because this book is a kind of allegoria on the allegoria on the allegoria on the allegoria, and then I will explain why. I read a moment. Ho sempre voluto che ammiraste il mio digiuno, disse il digiunatore. E noi infatti lo ammiriamo, rispose il custode con affabilità. E invece non dovreste ammirarlo, replicò il digiunatore. D'accordo, allora non lo ammireremo, disse il custode. Ma perché poi non dovremmo ammirarlo? Perché io devo digiunare, non posso farne a meno. continuò il digiunatore. Ma guarda un po', disse il custode, e perché non ne puoi fare a meno? Perché, disse il digiunatore, sollevando un po' la testolina e parlando con le labbra arricciate come un bacio, proprio all'orecchio del custode, così che nessuna parola andasse perduta, perché non riuscivo a trovare il cibo che mi piacesse. Se l'avessi trovato, credimi, non avrei fatto tante storie e mi sarei abbuffato come te o come chiunque altro. Furono le sue ultime parole, ma nei suoi occhi spenti si leggeva ancora la ferma, anche se non più fiera, convinzione di continuare a digiunare. Frank Kafka, il digiunatore. Che facciamo? Tentiamo di tradurlo in inglese o dire un attimino? It's okay? It's okay like this? Okay. Then we will, perhaps when we will read all of them, then I will explain in English a little bit what I said.
Yeah. Patrick, just a question. You are obsessed right now with this idea of the privation, no? And how do you relate them to the works that you are developing right now or to your design evolution in this moment?
You know, for all of us, the period of Salone is una festa, is the end of the year, is a moment fantastic, but it's always an exam too, no? It's always an exam, and this year we have this exam, and the city is going to have another exam, which is going to be in the next month, even less than a month, which is going to be the Expo. And the argument is about, feeding the world and blah, blah, we know. Then I thought to wait for the Expo with a kind of mental or virtual or more analogical fasting could be a good way. Then I was speaking with friends of me that they were doing an exhibition about fasting, and I said, perfect. I'm really interested in the argument. I think is already one of the exhibitions in the Salone del Mobile out of the fair in the city of Milano. And there were three things I liked. First, I did a kind of quarantine. Quarantine is 40 days, no? And in the studio, we were saying, if we do a quarantine of fasting, you will be 40 days that all the tools you need for eating, they will be a little bit lost. Then in 40 days, we were doing little pieces with our 3D printing that they were, part of a spoon, part of a glass, part of all the items that we need for eating. And in the moment we were doing in a very light way, like if they were, in the air. Then the machine had a problem because she needed to create a kind of frame to arrive to them and to keep them floating. Then all the random structure that came around all them created a kind of new architecture, and is I think how virtual comes inside our life. When we did this piece, and we call it 40 days. Il Digiunatore, the book which is the introduction of Philip Roth, speaking about Kafka, is the last, when Kafka was 40 years old, he died. This was the last thing he tried to publish, and the last thing he wrote. But at the same time, in the moment when Roth was writing this book about Kafka and about Digiuno, he was 40 years old. And the history of Kafka is about an artist that is trying to do a kind of fasting for the public. He's in a jail, and he has to do fasting for 40 days. And for him was never enough. Then it's a kind of the allegoria of 40 on 40 days, on 40 days, on 40 years, on 40. And that was my playful history. Ciao.
Thank you. So I'd like right now to introduce Ashley, as I know that Urtex is in a way also connected to this profile of being a designer, being a curator, and how much the attitude of a designer affect our life and our way of living every day.
Absolutely. The text that I chose is by David Balzer. It was recently released, and it's titled Curationism, How Curating Took Over the Art World and Everything Else. In it, he states, curationism is then the acceleration of the curatorial impulse to become a dominant way of thinking and being. I contend that since about the mid-1990s, we have been living in the curationist movement, in which institutions and businesses rely on others, often variously credentialed experts, to cultivate and organize things in an expression cum assurance of value and an attempt to make affiliations with and to court various audiences and consumers. Curators have become expert at presenting exhibitions and biennials that appear radical and oppositional, whether to museum orthodoxy or to regimes, common behaviors and codes, when curators in fact employ such radicalism and opposition precisely to attract audiences and to increase their event's cultural capital. In the 1990s, underfunded museums recruited curators who in turn recruited artists devoted to audience engagement and seemingly unusual participatory actions as a means of making the institution appear more enlightened and be more popular. These artists and curators are not outsiders. They have become some of the most successful established cultural figures of our time. And if curation is everywhere, it is also both strangely embodied and disembodied. The curator is no longer just an art world figure. Within the art world, a select number of curators, like Hans Ulrich Obrist, dominate their institutions, but also transcend them, playing roles in media and culture. Outside the art world, curation is powerful, but also diffuse. Celebrities act as curators, not just for exhibitions, but for music festivals and boutiques. We curate in relation to ourselves, using the term to refer to any number of things we do and consume on a daily basis. And here he's asking, now that we curate even our lunch, what happens to the role of the connoisseur in contemporary culture?
Why did you select this piece? I know that it's connected with what you're doing right now and with this moment of your learning also path.
Exactly. I chose it because unfortunately all my books are overseas and in boxes, and this is something that I found very interesting in researching for my thesis project. I'm working on a project for Christie's where I'm interning, and the question of curation is very interesting to me because we even curate our online playlists at this point. So what does it mean in the big picture, not just in the art world or exhibitions? That's my question that I'm interested in learning from all of you.
Thank you. Emiliano, I know that you selected a very peculiar book.
I changed it.
Ah, you changed it. Ah.
It was too long.
Okay.
The other one was too long, so the book I'm gonna read is in Italian too because it's never been released in English, and that's a book written for the theater. The name is Lehman Trilogy, and it talks about the history of the Lehman Brothers since the beginning when they moved from Germany to the United States in, I guess, 1845, and then it talks also, of course, in a fiction way, the history of the family, how they started, and then the decline of that we all know about the Lehman Brothers. So I'm going to read in Italian, and then it's very easy to understand, but mostly we can talk about later about the meaning of the book. So it talks about these three brothers. And now in the part I'm going to read, it talks about the youngest one that is going to ask to one of a very rich man of the city. I'm going to ask them to have his daughter as bride. So, 19 anni, Babette. Una piccola voglia rossa sulla gota destra, Babette. Occhi chiari, Babette. Un fermacapelli di sughero a treccia, Babette. Capelli più scuri che il legno del bancone, Babette. Il bancone dove Meyer, da qualche tempo, sbaglia perfino le addizioni e le sottrazioni. Babette. E dimentica il magazzino aperto. Babette. e per distrazione, non per altro, interrompe il digiuno assaggiando la zuppa di testatonda di Gu, appunto, Babette, sempre Babette. Chi siano i Lehman Brothers lo sanno bene i genitori di Babette Newgas e anche i loro 9 figli. Passano anche loro, come tutti, ogni giorno sul viale di Montgomery, davanti all'insegna nera e gialla sulla porta che si inceppa la maniglia. Eppure è proprio da lì che parte il padre di Babette, seduto in poltrona, circondato, accerchiato alle spalle da tutti e 8 i figli maschi, perché Babette è l'unica figlia femmina, Mazel Tov, come un plotone di esecuzione schierato davanti a Meyerbeer con l'abito elegante già visto al funerale, ma i capelli pettinati, un mazzolino di fiori, sudore freddo e, ahimè, la barba ancora lunga per il lutto. Suo fratello Emmanuel 3 passi indietro, immobile, muto, costretto con la forza, rappresentanza di famiglia. Visto che vi presentate, gradirei conoscere, ragazzo, cosa fate esattamente in quel vostro negozio? Un tempo ci vendevamo stoffe, Mr. Newgas, adesso non più. Babette e sua madre, nella stanza accanto, con le serve di colore, sono appostate, con l'orecchio alla porta e l'occhio alla serratura. Se non vendete più, e che vi serve un negozio? Ma perché vendere? Vendiamo ancora, Mr. Newgas. Vendete cosa? Vendiamo cotone, Mr. Newgas. E il cotone non è stoffa? Quando noi lo vendiamo, non lo è ancora, Mr. Newgas. E se non è stoffa, chi ve lo compra? Chi lo farà diventare stoffa, Mr. Newgas? Noi stiamo nel mezzo. Ecco, stiamo proprio nel mezzo, Mr. Newgas. Che razza di mestiere è stare nel mezzo? Un mestiere che non esiste ancora, Mr. Newgas. Lo cominciamo noi. Nessuno vive di un mestiere che non esiste. Noi sì, Lehman Brothers. Il nostro mestiere è... Avanti, cos'è? È una parola inventata. Siamo mediatori. Ecco, sì. Ah, e perché dovrei dare mia figlia a un mediatore? Perché guadagniamo, Mr. Newgas. Meglio, guadagneremo. Giuro, fidatevi di me. E su questo fidatevi di me, prodigiosamente, Meyerbeer sfodera un tale sorriso, così convinto, così sicuro, così credibile, che il signor Newgas e i suoi 8 figli di fatto si arrendono, anzi di più, si fidano e fidandosi affidano.
So I really like this piece, and I think that also in a way it's very interesting in the terms of physical descriptions at the beginning, in this very punctual analysis of the scene. This is something that also you do in your illustration that are very, very strongly characterized by this poetic narration. When you look at them, it seems really to read pieces of a book. So how much the literature and your books, your favorites ones, your obsessive ones, affect the influence to the works that you do?
Yeah, I guess that my job, everyone's job, like the designer, the illustrator, the graphic designer, we just tell stories. So it's important to understand also how a story is told using another media as the writing can be. So it's very important that, for example, in my job, I describe a scene. I am able to give my audience the idea of a whole story just in one image. So it's very important to being able to condensate the message, to crunch the message, and to filter the message to give it back to my audience. And in this specific part of the book I read, what is important for me is that the Lehman Brothers were about to create a new job, a new profession. And so they trusted in their abilities, in their skills, and by the self-confidence, also the other people were able to trust in them. Even if you cannot, they're not be able to give proof, concrete proof in that moment of the success of their job, but they were able to give trust. First, they have trust in themselves, and then were able to make other people believe in that trust.
Flavia.
Okay, I chose Junk Space by Ram Koolhaas. The book is a collection of 3 essays, and these 3 essays are like phases of a path that tells how an architecture as a combination of different spaces is changing our world nowadays. And I choose the third essay that is called Junk Space as the title, and I'm going to read just the introduction. If space junk is the human debris that litters the universe, junk space is the residue mankind leaves on the planet. The built product of modernization is not modern architecture, but junk space. Junk space is what remains after modernization and has run its course, or more precisely, what coagulates while modernization is in progress, its fallout. Modernization as a rational program to share the blessing of science universally. Junk space is its apotheosis or meltdown. Okay, it's just a short one. And I choose this essay because I'm graded in architecture, and this book was very important for my professional path. And I think it's important to highlight on the shrinking line between the public space and the public space and the space used for public. And that's it.
It's also again a sort of privation, progressive privation. We are losing something, just like in your text. This time, as it's the last time, also I selected my own favorite readings, a text that I used to read several times when I want also to remember myself what is a designer and how much how our life is around that. It's from Fronzoni, and he says, come spesso ricordava agli studenti, il progetto inizia con il progettare se stessi, nel proprio modo di vivere, di bere, di mangiare, di vestire, di muoversi nella città, di relazionarsi alla gente. Nel suo fare progetto, Fronzoni voleva che confluisse una personale e precisa visione del mondo. Il suo commettente aveva di fronte a sé una persona dolce, eppure di grande lucidità e forza, capace di condurre a scelte estreme. Per alcuni di questi clienti, Fronzoni è stato un faro illuminante, le persone che ha consentito loro di fare un grande salto professionale, ma anche etico e politico. I really like this one because I really appreciate this attitude and the idea that this design approach is something pervading our way of living, our way of behaving, our way of putting in relation ourselves to the others. That is something also in common in all the readings of tonight. It's our obsession that is reflected in what we read and what we are looking for, what we really want. So I want to finish with something very funny that I just found yesterday on the Facebook of a colleague who did a screenshot from Siri. And he asked Siri, tell me about the meaning of life. And Siri answered, try and be nice to people, avoid eating fat, read a book every now and then, get some walking in, and try to live together in peace and harmony with the people of all creeds and nations. So, thank you very much.